What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. We have another installment of Sci-Fi Sunday. That's right. Two more books, two more reviews. Cue the intro. All right, so if you couldn't guess from the title, we're talking about The Island of Doctor Moreau and Dungeon Crawler Carl, Book Two, which is Carl's Doomsday Scenario. Here's the two books on the menu today, people. And I imagine Um, Carl is going to be the shorter of the reviews, so let's get the longer one out of the way, the one I most recently read, and that is The Island of Doctor Moreau by H.G. Wells. So I'm gonna start this review. I'm gonna commit a sin here, and that is that to confess my history with H.G. Wells has not been a good one. I tried to read The Invisible Man. I still have the copy of that book, and I just got like about 60 to 70 pages in, and that book's only like probably 120 total, so maybe close to halfway through the book. I just couldn't finish it. I think it was a combination of just like the writing style was pretty bland. I wasn't too. Um, it felt like the big reveal was that our protagonist was invisible. Um, I didn't see H.G. Wells do much with maybe the implications of what having the ability to be unseen from society and other people wouldn't tell. From what I've seen of reviews online, that is something that does happen or is touched on in the climax of the book. What our main character decides to do with his newfound power, but it just took a while to get there. See how the lighting just got brighter? That's God shining upon me because He knows I'm correct. Um, oh, that's I should probably cut that out. But yeah, I struggled to get through The Invisible Man, and I've also tried to read The War of the Worlds a few times. Again, that's one that I sort of got almost to the halfway mark and just kind of lost interest and would move on. I think part of this is because the big appeal of these stories of the time was the big ideas that Wells had, but now First Contact, Alien First Contact is a genre that I'm pretty familiar with. So you can't hinge too much of the story on the fact alone that aliens have arrived because now that I've seen it a lot in modern media, you have to add another element to keep me interested, which H.G. Wilson didn't have to worry about back in his day. But I say all this because I actually really enjoyed The Island of Doctor Moreau. So again, this is a shorter novel, novella, whatever you want to call it. It's about 150 pages or something like that. It wasn't that long. I don't know. It's something about Wells' style this time, maybe that I think hooked me earlier on in this story. Um, we sort of get the second hand of counting. It's like, okay, this is the journal I found. Let's read this journal of the character, and then we're sort of that is the lens through the story, lens into the story. It's through a second hand retelling, so, sort of Lovecraftian in that aspect, and also in the style of the storytelling as well. Um, I think one of the strengths of the I Love Doctor Moreau is that the questions are sprinkled pretty early on to keep you interested, fascinated with what's happening, what's going to happen. This was a book I came into blind, actually, which I think also helped. It kept things pretty interesting. Um, but yeah, we get the story, recounted by someone who has found the journal of Edward Prendick, of a man stranded at sea, and through uh, you know means of his ship being recovered, he ends up on a very strange island with a strange couple of humans. After he's nursed back to health by one of the physicians, biologists, scientists that work uh, on the island of Doctor Moreau, and that would be Montgomery, the character of Montgomery. And so very early on, uh, you're sort of wondering, why is this island odd? What is happening here? That's something that sort of H.G. Wells presents pretty early in this story, so it hooked me pretty quick. And once I had the hook, and I kept getting that steady feeding of information and clues to what was really going on this island. Yeah, I was hooked, and it was a short read too. So, but it's not I guess the style itself or the way in which H.G. Wells slowly gives you more insight into what is really occurring and why these characters are so odd and strange, or behaving in the way that they are peculiarly. Um, but it's also the questions that H.G. Wells poses in this book. As you saw in my opening of this review, I sort of talked about how it felt like in The Invisible Man and War of the Worlds, it's like maybe the big questions weren't being asked. It's sort of the big question was, oh, aliens are this is first contact. How would humanity react against an overwhelming power? Um, or like the Invisible Man, where it's okay, this guy turns invisible. That's the big twist, um, which may have been uh, pioneered or something that is pioneering for its time, but in modern sci-fi, as time has progressed, is something that is pretty familiar. I mean, now being invisible is like a superhero thing, but the Island of Doctor Moreau, we have some pretty fascinating implications here, and it's through the characters themselves. I think that helps too, is the improved character work in the Island of Doctor Moreau. I actually uh, found these characters pretty enjoyable and unique with their own set of individual characteristics, and I think that might have been something that was lacking in the other books. It seemed all the voices were the same, and it was more the books were more of a thought piece. And this book is also a thought piece, a very interesting and fascinating one, but also there was compelling characters within it as well. And I think that's another reason why I had a much better experience with the Island of Doctor Moreau. So I'll try to keep this shorter and sweeter. Maybe not give any spoilers to at what necessarily unfolds in this story, because I think it's better to come into it blind than to know what happens. Um, as with every book, maybe. I wonder if there's an argument that could be made for a book that'd be better than know. I don't know. Sidetracked. But this book, so let me touch on some of the big questions I was talking about earlier about that H.G. Wells presents, and a lot of it is the distinction between human and animal, right? Of course, we are animals, right? But what's the line that makes us human and makes animals, this tier below us? Because I mean, it is often, I know at least in my experience, you kind of forget that humans are animals, right? Because where our intelligence level is to such a higher degree, you sort of feel like you have the superiority over animals, right? Obviously, we are at the top of the food chain, so maybe that's obviously the superiority is justified. But I think it is important to sort of examine the human condition and understand that part of us are still animal as well. There's still that animalistic part to us, and I think that's one confliction that the characters face a lot. Our main character he judges or he sees Montgomery in this sort of way because he sympathizes with these animals. And Prendick will see the animals behave in some sort of way which makes them seem more animalistic. And some of that's in their biology, which is just a scientific fact, but also it's in their like instinct to survive and how quick they can be to aggression. But that's also something that, when humans uh, are in certain environments are also quick to do as well. But it was also nice to see that these animals, uh, through their messed up physiology and splicing that Dr. Moreau does to them, um, how there is human aspects to them. And there's an interesting point in the story where, okay, we're just going to spoiler territory. I'm sorry. All right, we'll just cut off there. I just want to leave you with this. If you're interested in the Island of Doctor Moreau, it's a suggested read I would have. If you're a sci-fi fan, if you're interested in the divide between man and animal and beast, what are the parameters? What makes us human? What makes us in a different category than animals? This is interesting. Um, but I think yeah, some important questions here is our development? I go back and forth reading this book if this is a critique of Darwinism or if it's in support, right? Um, it Part of me believes from the storytelling and the message that part of our uh, you know progression is something that is unique to humans. Despite some of the things that occur on the island, it seems that it is impossible to replicate the intelligence of humanity, even through, you know, physiological manipulation of other animals to try to try and achieve that. Um, Maybe it's we have our character, one big critique that one character makes of another one is that he says that he lets pain drive him too much, and that makes him actually more animalistic, that he lets his pain, or his sorrow and grief distract him from achieving true scientific uh magnificence, or to true scientific uh, knowledge or requirement, or acquisition of scientific knowledge. His animalistic fear of pain and sorrow and sympathy is holding him behind. When nature itself, it does not have sympathy or regret or anything like that. It is ran on a simple code of survival, right? And so there's stuff like that. Some really interesting questions here. Again, the whole Darwinism, evolution, the plausibility, whatever. I think it's just the general connection between man and animals is that's the center question. And H.G. Wells uses compelling characters, relatable characters to sort of uh, talk about this discussion. He doesn't, like I said, he doesn't give one argument or the other. He gives both, so you see it from both sides. And this book had me thinking. It's very short, but this is one of the books I was thinking about a while after I read it, thinking about some of the topics I came up with. These are good points. So maybe want to research into the whole, evolution, or, intelligent creator, thing like that. Good read though, honestly. This is great classic science fiction, I would say. Underrated H.G. Wells read. I feel like when most people talk about H.G. Wells, it's the Time Machine, it's the War of the Worlds, it's the Invisible Man, but the Island of Doctor Moreau is my favorite of all of them. So underrated. Check it out for sure if you're into classic sci-fi. All right, and last but not least for this video, good book. Read it. Penguin Classic. We're going to talk about Carl's Doomsday Scenario. Dungeon Crawler Colorado Book 2. Now, I'm super late to this series. Every time I look on Bookstagram, it's someone posting their review of A Parade of Horribles, which is Book 8. So I'm a little bit behind the wagon. But Book 2, I would say, is of a similar tier to Book 1. Uh, Similar to, I think if I had to pick one, I think Book 1 might edge out Book 2 a little bit, because there are some complaints I had with Book. I guess there's some parts of book two where it kind of felt like it was dragging a little bit, or there were some scenes that I had some critiques of. Whereas book one was pretty well paced. I was pretty engaged the entire time. Uh, but book two, again, Matt Denman being a master class in world building, we get little bits and pieces of even greater world building going on. We get development in character from our main cast. I mean, this book does everything that uh, the second book in a series should do. It expands the world, it expands the characters. So all that was great. Before I get into the spoiler section, really the two critiques that I had of this book, and I'll try to keep the spoiler free, of course, but there was two monologue scenes that felt kind of out of place or disjointed, or like illogical. I don't know. There was two monologue scenes where I was like, I could have went without, or I wish it was handled differently, I guess. Um, but yeah, if you liked the first book and you devoured it like I did, this book is just fuel to the flame. Definitely read book two. All right, so to get into like spoiler territory, I think Carl's class slash race selection, I think it's a race because his class is a compensated uh, anarchist. Yeah, his race, the primal selection. I think maybe foreshadows his future, right? Because the primals were the dominant species of the universe. I guess they were like the ones to rebel and rule the universe, and then they kind of disappeared, and nobody knows what happens to them. But maybe that sort of foreshadows Carl's rise to the top. Uh, I don't know. Maybe another thing. Uh, so I think the one scene in this book that I'm so torn on is the Grimaldi and Signet scene, where Carl has the worms in his mouth and he's talking to Grimaldi and Signet. He's like, hey, listen, just talk about it. Just talk this out. You don't have to, fight to the death or kill each other over this uh, disagreement or over the situation. Like, just talk it and to each other, communicate and figure it out instead of fighting. And the scene is so beautiful in one regard because when we get the backstory on Carl, we understand that this is something he wished he may have done with his own family, or wishes that his family would have done when he was a child, is to communicate and talk through things and try to work, try to make it out instead of resorting immediately to just being disgruntled and fighting about it or disregarding it completely and moving on. Like, giving things an honest shot and trying to talk it through and fix it. My only problem is he has worms in his mouth. He's like trying to give this like very thoughtful monologue, and there's worms in his mouth the entire time. And I couldn't help but think the whole scene, like, how's he getting this out? Like, wouldn't he be like gurgling and a lot and like barely getting the words out because he's worms in his mouth? Unless maybe he was talking through the chat system, but it didn't. I don't think anything was indicated in the book that he was using the chat system. I think he was actually talking to Signet, but he had worms. It just felt like that's what tears me on the scene. Is it's like, man, this is like such a great character moment for Carl, but also like, or character building moment. But it just doesn't feel logical that he'd be able to get all this out also while being incredibly injured and dying. Like, imagine you're fading to black, you're about to die, you have worms in your mouth, and you give this monologue. It just feels, I don't know, uh, unrealistic for me. That was one critique I had. Maybe other people, we're in a uh, we're in a video game dungeon with aliens and talking cats, so like maybe realism isn't what you're going for, and that's okay. So maybe that's not a fair critique, but that is just one thing that kind of bothered me with that scene. Holy God, the remix scene too. I get it. He wanted to get his story out, right? So he can be relieved of his duties in the dungeon. Because he kept respawning and coming back. That was a point that my fiance made to me. She's like, well, he always, he has to finish his story to end his quest so that he can, not be in the vicious, oppressive cycle that the dungeon puts its workers in. Uh, yeah, but it's just a scene. Like, first off, I didn't have much investment in Remix, this character. We get this hint that he was a former crawler, which is kind of a neat little Easter egg, or may become important down the line. But he's kind of a character that shows up and gives a monologue. Like, we didn't really have any reason. I didn't feel any. I didn't. This character wasn't compelling to me necessarily. I didn't feel any reason to want to hear him out and hear his final last speech because I just met the guy. You know what I'm saying? Imagine if, like, you went to the bar and Billy Bob beside you was, uh, uh, 4 bush lights in, and he's giving you this speech about his life, and he's like, and he's taking forever. I mean, he spends like half an hour talking to you about his life. It's like, dude, I just met you. Like, I'm just here to get a drink, have a good time. Why? You know what I'm saying? That's how I felt in this scene. I didn't have much. There wasn't much investment for me in this character to even care about what was happening. And I get it. Yeah, honestly, like, if I want to get my story done, get out there, I would have sped up. I would have told the story pretty quickly. But this guy stops like 18 times in his speech, and it was just. Thankfully, the scene that happens exactly after this, which is the AI just going bonkers and wanting to explode everything because his quest was all funky or whatever, like, that made up for that crazy monologue. We went from like, okay, like, we are crawling, no pun intended. We are crawling through the story to like, okay, we're ramped up, we're sprinting through the story now. But yeah, overall, I'll talk about that in the next clip. But overall, despite my critiques, Carl's Doomsday Scenario was also a great read. I got through it just as quick as the first one. I'm really invested in Carl and Donut and their growing supporting cast. In the world itself, I'm also super invested. I love how each book right now we're getting a new floor, we're getting a new map, a new world to work in. That's just super cool, and it keeps me interested. So yeah, Matt Damon definitely has something special here. He caught lightning in a bottle with the lit RPG genre. Is popularizing it. And yeah, so if you liked book one, read book two for sure. That will conclude Sci-Fi Sunday this week. Uh, my dear viewers, thank you all for watching. These are both two great books. Check them both out. Nothing negative to say today. I probably should have bashed one of them so I could have got views, but here on the Rolling Quince Media channel, We try to be honest. We try to be authentic. But yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.